If you thought the Walking Dead chapter was controversial, just wait until you see this one. Welcome to Sinister Grace. Seriously, Sinister Grace. This chapter is our first original chapter since Houndmaster released, and you know what that means. It means I'm sure they've been thoroughly tested and won't have any bugs whatsoever. This is also the update that was meant to address tunneling and slugging, except those changes didn't review too well on the PTB, so they didn't get pushed through. Wait, what do you mean some of the changes still made it through? Off the record got killed? Tenacity got nerfed? What? That doesn't make any— This chapter introduces a new killer, who I have some thoughts about. And the community also has some thoughts about. And a new survivor, who I actually like quite a lot. There's also been some nerfs and some buffs to perks and a whole rework to everyone's favorite masked murderer, Myers. Say that 3 times fast. Which basically turns Myers into a weird blend of anti-loop and dash slop killer. Needless to say, there's a bit that's changed since our last chapter overview, so let's get into it. The new killer Krasue is an anti-loop high mobility chase killer with a very low skill ceiling, and has made a bit of a splash in terms of community feedback. She's incredibly strong in the right hands and at this time has very little counterplay, which isn't ideal for a new killer and definitely can create a bit of frustration. Let me explain what she can do. Krasue has 2 forms, a body form and a head form. When the match starts, she begins in her body form. During this time, she's basically your standard M1 killer, except she can regurgitate a projectile that splashes on environments or direct hits with survivors. If a survivor happens to be caught in that splash or is directly hit, they become leeched. When a survivor is infected with this leech, it will slowly build over time. If it happens to build all the way up, they will become broken. You know that effect. It's the one that means you can't heal. When a survivor is leeched, it is incentivized that Krasue switch to her second form, which is her head form, and I'm not gonna lie, this does look pretty fucking cool. I'm a big fan of gore in Dead by Daylight, and Krasue brings a shitload of it. She splits from her body and instead becomes a floating head with her organs hanging below, all with her third-person camera to boot, which gives you a lot of information considering how much taller she is than Chucky. You can kick that little shit. I challenge you to try with her. During this form, she can use her intestinal whip to damage leech survivors, which has a crazy long lunge to it. It basically took me 2 games to get the hang of it, but once you do, you can hug tight loops and basically guarantee a hit on survivors regardless. Who doesn't love a little bit of random nonsense with no counterplay? While you can still hit healthy survivors that aren't leeched in this form, I wouldn't recommend it. Much like my alcoholic stepdad, it takes 3 hits to actually start doing damage. Once you hit a healthy survivor 3 times, they become fully leeched, allowing you to finally deal damage after that 3rd hit. Luckily, if you do come across a healthy survivor, you can just switch forms back and give them that old patooey, and then switch back to actually deal damage again. There's no reason you should be whipping healthy survivors in head form, unless of course you're super into BDSM, in which case you probably shouldn't be here. There's very little cooldown on form switching as well as regurgitating, so don't stress too much if you miss, you'll be able to do it again in less than 2 seconds. You don't suffer any real penalty for missing or slowdown while holding the regurgitate, allowing you to close the gap on a survivor while they're too busy trying to dodge the projectile for the 3rd time in 2 seconds. But that's not all. While in her second form, she can also move around the map at insane speeds using her headless flight ability. It's a special ability that has a long cooldown, but an equally long use time to boot. You can use this to move around the map, chase survivors, and even cut them off before they manage to get to another loop. A very effective strategy is to leech a survivor, hit them, switch forms, and continue the chase. It's very easy to master once you get the hang of it. Just don't be too surprised when survivors start DCing. But you can get a lot of value out of Krasue with very little input. While it does feel good, it is a little cheesy. In her second form, she can also vault drop pallets and windows very quickly, usually cutting off unsuspecting survivors in a loop and securing a free hit with her insanely long lunge distance. To remove the leeched status effect, survivors will need to find funguses around the map that allow them to gradually reduce the leeching effect over a period of time. How long this takes depends on how filled up the infection meter actually is. The closer you are to being broken, the longer it takes. If the survivor takes another projectile or whip from Krasue while they're recovering, this effect also instantly gets reapplied, and you lose a health state if it was the whip, which means Krasue can reapply pressure really quickly. These funguses will randomly spawn around the map and spawn on the ground where Krasue changes form. It's a good idea to keep track of where you've been changing forms a lot, as survivors tend to be hovering there when they're infected, and free info like that is hard to come across in Dead by Daylight. As it stands right now, she has a lot in her kit, which makes her incredibly strong and a little unfair. If you disagree, that's fine, but you're wrong. As I stated in my previous video, I think Krasue is still a little overtuned even as of the most recent patch. I won't go into it again here because I only have a few things extra to say about her, and this video was more about the entire chapter and not just her. but she is a very strong killer that has very little to no counterplay and a little too easy to play. But, as always, there is always somebody crawling out of their cesspool to comment some nonsense like, "But Blaza, this thing that's completely unfair actually benefits me, and that's why it's not broken. You just need to get good." And to that, I will say, does your family tree run in a circle? I am so tired of this us versus them mentality. We as a community need to be able to recognize when things are unfair on both sides. I know it's hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes, but just because something benefits you now does not mean the pendulum won't eventually swing the other way, and we need to be able to recognize when something might be overtuned, regardless of which side is benefiting at the time. Hopefully she'll be reined in eventually. They're not done tuning her right now, and I can't wait to see where she goes from here. She's strong, but a little too strong. And yes, I saw the patch notes. No, she's still broken. But enough of that. Let's talk about her perks. Krasue brings 3 new perks in a Dead by Daylight, which have their uses, I am certain they do, but personally I think they're quite boring and lack a bit of flair. The first of these perks is Hex Overture of Doom. Oh my god. This hex curses the furthest generator from your starting location in a match, highlighting it in yellow. When this generator has been worked on for at least 5 seconds by a survivor, your terror radius is transferred to the generator and set to 32 meters. You also become undetectable. You only gain these effects, however, for 30 seconds. So, if that generator gets completed and the hex is still in play, it will curse the next furthest generator and so forth. But it can activate multiple times on the same gen. If you push survivors off, this could technically be free information as long as you know when it activates, which it does light up when it does, so free information is free information. While I wouldn't use this perk for stealth, it can be great for information and finding where survivors are and what gens they're working on. The only issue is, of course, you don't control which generator it actually activates on, and it's a hex perk, so use it at your own discretion. Any experienced survivor will immediately recognize the perk that's running once the terror radius kicks in and either dedicate a member to locate and remove it or ignore it completely because it's actually not that great in the first place. As I've stated in the past, hex perks are meant to be really, really strong because they can be removed from the match if a survivor finds them. This perk just feels like the Unknown's perk, unforeseen, but with a caveat that you don't actually need to kick a gen, so you don't get to control when it comes in, which makes it worse by comparison. This perk could work with stealth builds, but personally I doubt this is a perk that I would use over stealth perks that are already in the game. I prefer to control when my stealth activates and not just random shit that's done by the other side. Moving on to her second perk from everyone's favorite spaghetti weave is Ravenous, which is a perk I feel is left over from the anti-tunnel and anti-slug change that was meant to happen. After every survivor has been hooked at least once, every survivor screams and instantly becomes exposed for 60 seconds, which means they're vulnerable to an M1 hit. This perk incentivizes spreading hooks similar to perks like Pain Res. This is the kind of perk design I like, but yet again, it feels a little too weak here and way too situational. 60 seconds is actually a really short period of time for the effort you put in for this perk to activate. Not to mention that special attacks do not work with the exposed status effect anymore, which means you only really get value out of this perk with M1 attacks or stuff like Deathslinger's Reel. So, where this perk would shine best is in the hands of killers that predominantly use M1 attacks to deal damage, but most of those killers won't get any value out of it for how much effort they need to put in to get the perk to activate because they don't have the mobility that comes with being an M2 killer. They might get lucky and have 1 or 2 downs with it, but again, it's just another perk that feels too weak to use in the current mix-up. And another thing that you have to consider is that Vigil is extremely popular in the game right now. You can almost guarantee one person is at least running it in a squad of 4, so that exposed status effect goes down from 60 seconds to closer to 30, and that's even worse. I'm not against the idea of rewarding killers with decent perks that give them a benefit for spreading hooks, but this isn't that. This actually feels like a slot that you would be punished for, bringing this perk over something else that would actually slow down the game or assist you getting downs. I just cannot see this perk having any real value on killers that actually need to use a perk like this. But hey, I could be wrong. I haven't really had time to play around with this one as much as the other perks, so do let me know if you guys have seen the value that this perk brings to the table in the comments below. And finally, the third perk Krasue brings is Wandering Eye. Whenever you start a chase with a survivor, the auras of any injured survivors within 20 meters of your location are revealed to you for 5 seconds, which will definitely make tunneling easier for some of you. Wait, wasn't this perk supposed to come out during an anti-tunnel update? This perk is unironically probably the best perk that Krasue brings to the table, allowing you to prioritize survivors with only 1 health state so you can get a quicker down. However, the problem is, It only works if a survivor is already near an injured survivor, and it has a very short range. Once again, I do hate to point out the obvious, but 9 times out of 10, if you find a healthy survivor near an injured survivor, you can either use your eyes to see them or your ears to hear them, especially in a 20-meter radius. This perk also has the massive potential to incentivize slugging if you do get value out of it, so the perk value could be hypothetically massive, revealing multiple survivors that are easy pickings, so to speak. It's certainly a weird perk, and considering it was meant to come out with a whole anti-tunneling update, it feels a bit underhanded. Behavior does write my jokes for me sometimes. Moving on to the survivor side, we get a new character that definitely wasn't created to sell a lot of skins. Vee is the 49th survivor to join the roster and probably one of the coolest ones we've had in recent memory. And no, I'm not addressing the Sable in the room. But as with most survivors, they usually don't have anything to offer that differs from one survivor to another outside of cosmetics and, of course, perks. And she certainly has perks. The first of these perks is Ghost Notes, arguably one of the strongest perks we have ever seen in a long while. While exhausted, scratch marks you leave disappear faster by 50% and you recover from exhausted 10% faster. Yes, this stacks with perks like Vigil and Lightweight. So if you thought that Vigil was too strong, which it is, this makes it even worse. I have seen an uptake of the following build, which is possibly the strongest chase build at the moment. Lightweight, Vigil, Ghost Notes, and Sprint Burst, or really any exhaustion perk in that last slot. With this sort of build, the recovery time for Sprint Burst is closer to 20 seconds rather than 40, halving it almost entirely. And if you pair it with Lightweight, while exhausted, your scratch marks disappear completely after 2.5 seconds. Which is just nuts. Unless the killer is basically on top of you, this can get you out of situations more often than not. It feels oppressive to play against. This perk by itself is nothing to write home about, but the fact that it stacks really well with other perks already in the game, it makes it incredibly strong. Granted, you do need to have an entire build dedicated to this much value, so it's not broken per se, but it is definitely strong. Too strong. Moving on to Vee's second perk, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. When you are standing and idle, you can press the active ability button to start a performance. This is similar to Bardic Inspiration, where you play an instrument for 15 seconds. During this, you are met with continuous skill checks that empower yourself and every survivor within 16 meters of you. When empowered, it increases the chances of skill checks by 20%. It then has a cooldown of 90 seconds. This perk is weird. Not in the sense that it's bad, it's just a very niche perk. I don't see the point in using this over a Bardic Inspiration in certain gen builds, but luckily I was able to pair it with perks like Autodidact in order to greatly improve its value, or even perks like Fogwise for constant free information. It's not exactly an amazing perk, but it does have its uses, even if it is quite niche. The thing that bothers me about this perk is the description. It increases the chances of skill checks by 20%. But skill checks are not a static thing. They're completely random. You can go an entire generator hypothetically without ever getting a skill check. So how do you increase the chances of something that's RNG by 20%? Is it a flat stack to the chance of a skill check? I don't know. I wasn't able to really determine whether or not this actually had the impact that it says it does, because I was able to use this perk and still never get a skill check with Autodidact. But then again, equipping Autodidact does decrease your chances of getting a skill check by 3000%, so it does have the added benefit of sometimes taming a killer, so use it wisely, I guess, but this one is just super weird. No idea how this one works just yet. Let me know if you guys have had any kind of success with this. All right, the next perk is one I can't recommend in any sense of the word. The last perk that Vee brings into the game is Road Life. While injured, not broken, and repairing a generator, you gain 1 token for each great skill check success. When you have 6 tokens, the tokens will get instantly spent and you gain a 100% healing speed on your next heal until it's completed. You also lose a token if you miss a skill check. I am almost certain you see the issue here as well, but I'm still gonna talk about it. The activation condition of this perk is actually an insane ask for something this niche. Firstly, you need to be injured and not broken, which means you can't just run a build dedicated to staying injured to get value out of this perk. No Mither fans are in fucking shambles right now. Not to mention, you only get a single heal off this. it will only be active for a single heal and then it's just gone. You need to do all of that once again. Granted, you can use this with self-care for a faster heal on yourself, but 100% on 35% speed is only 70% of normal heal speed. So it's still slower than just bringing something like Strength in Shadows, but with a worse activation condition. I can't see a moment where this perk does anything that another perk already does better. If a teammate is on the ground, just bring We're Gonna Live Forever. You need to heal yourself? Just bring Strength in Shadows and Botany Knowledge. You want to be a medic for your entire team? Bring stuff like We'll Make It, Botany, Empathetic Connection, or Do No Harm or Desperate Measures. There is nothing that this perk does that another perk doesn't do infinitely better and synergizes better. This perk just doesn't do anything. It blatantly fucking sucks. It's a soft throw. It's a soft throw. This perk is a throw. You bring this, you are blatantly throwing the game. It takes far too long to activate, has an insane activation condition, and can only be used once. I seriously think this perk is a worse pick than just bringing self-care. I understand why Behavior doesn't want to add similar perks to others that already exist, but this is one of those cases where it just doesn't work, like at all. It's a wasted perk slot. Maybe I'm being too harsh. And again, let me know your thoughts on this one, but I can't see any real use for this. It's way too niche, it has way too many activation conditions, and it's just not a good perk at all. Moving on to the next big thing this update does, the Maya's rework, which is weird to say the least. Before I break this one down, yes, Maya's needed some form of a rework. He has consistently been at the lower end of killers for an incredibly long time, and I, along with many others, did want a rework for him. I just don't think that this is the one. Myers is now equipped with 3 different modes: Stalker, Pursuer, and Evil Incarnate. Myers can swap between Stalker and Pursuer at any time, provided that his stalk meter is not charged. Stalker allows Myers to do what he does best and stalk survivors while gradually building up his stalk meter. During this, he is undetectable. The stalk meter builds up faster the further you are away from survivors, and survivors no longer have a maximum amount that they can be stalked for. Myers can now quote-unquote juice them for as long as he wants to. Pursuer, on the other hand, is a much more chase-focused mode. You lose undetectable, but you're now faster and basically turn into an M1 killer. A good Myers will use this mode to catch an injured survivor off before they make it to a loop or a pallet. It can be useful, but you're usually far better off just sticking with Stalk for most of the match. Not only are you undetectable during Stalk mode, meaning survivors will have a hard time tracking you and knowing where you are, but you can also unleash Evil Incarnate once the Stalk is fully charged. When fully charged, you automatically switch to Pursuer mode, but with the ability to activate Evil Incarnate. Evil Incarnate basically allows Michael to charge up a slaughtering strike. Really, Behavior, slashing strike was right there. The longer you charge this strike for, the longer you will actually lunge, giving Myers a very long lunge that automatically downs healthy survivors and breaks down pallets, similar to Blight. Learning to master this around tight loops is paramount to chaining together some real pressure against a survivor. Your vault speed is also still 20% faster while in Evil Incarnate, and you gain the ability to Mori any survivor that's in their second hook state. You got all that? Great. This rework turns Myers into an anti-loop killer while still maintaining what sort of made Myers, Myers. Learning the key difference in his modes is key to effectively using him. Knowing when to stalk and when to pursue is a nice shift from his previous state. Evil Incarnate still feels pretty intimidating. You have to be really careful around loops because he can and will catch you if you're not cautious. It's nice to have a deeper skill ceiling here that separates the weaker Myers from the ones that are borderline terrifying, but if I'm being 100% honest, it does feel like there's just something missing here. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he just doesn't feel as intimidating as before. With this rework, he does become stronger and has far more at his kit, so if that was the intention with the rework, they nailed it. It's just sort of boring, for lack of a better word. The rework is just something that we've seen done before, and while it makes him stronger, I kind of feel like it makes him lose a little bit of his identity. It is a tiny gripe, and I absolutely understand that he needed something like this, so in hindsight, I am glad he got some form of a rework. I think I might have to make another video on this because there is a lot to say and I can't just cover it all here with the chapter overview, like the add-on changes and the best ways to play him. Moving on to some killer nerfs now. Praise the sun, because the ghoul has finally been nerfed. Slightly. I still don't like Carnegie. My hate for Carnegie has not exactly been hidden. I made several jokes about him in the Walking Dead overview video, but he can now no longer kidnap tech survivors. Sort of. It still slows you down for a second, but it doesn't hold you in place, which is a much better improvement over before. It adds a little bit of counterplay, which is always nice when playing against the ghoul. He's still strong, but he's not like overly unbearably strong now. Next up on the list is the Dark Lord, Dracula. Again, sort of. Behavior has this weird tendency to buff some things while nerfing some, because we can't have one without the other. Flat nerfs or buffs are bad, for some reason. The cooldown for Hellfire is now 9.5 seconds rather than 10. The pillars are now 8 rather than 7. And his movement time while charging is now 3.7 meters rather than 3.8. He also got a small nerf to his wolf form, which means the pounce time is increased by half a second, and scent orbs now spawn a second later. Do you see what I mean? I feel like behavior was in a fine state with Dracula before. He may not have been overperforming, but they just micro-tuned him a smidge, and now, I don't know, he's in a weird state. I like him, he's fine. It's not anything to write home about. It is what it is. Also praise the sun once more because the clown now has a longer activation on his afterpiece, Antidote Clouds. Instead of being 1 second, it's now 1.6, which should rein in his haste spam quite a bit. I like this. Clown was sort of too easy to play before. Now he has a little bit of nuance once again, which is great. Fantastic. Clown mains will rejoice. And finally, the most balanced killer in all of Dead by Daylight's history got a buff. The Unknown, my boy, the fucking legend himself, had a small buff across the board. Pause to read them all, but long story short, he needed this. It puts him more in line with other killers in his tier. It's not a gross overtune, but it's just a flat buff overall, which is what these buffs should be, instead of this jibby-jabby micro fucking buff and nerf shit that they do lately. Lastly, let's talk about the most significant perk changes and nerfs. I'm not going to cover all of them because, well, that's just too much time. If you are interested, pause the video to read and have a quick look. Notably, the only perks on the killer side with the biggest changes is Hex, Ruin, Oppression, and Monitor and Abuse. Ruin and Oppression have been buffed, and all I have to say is, finally, Ruin needed to be a bit stronger because it is a Hex. Once it gets cleansed, it's completely useless. So it needs to be powerful to compensate that. Now it's far more of a concern for survivors to actually go for, rather than just being a mild inconvenience at the best of times. Oppression, on the other hand, won't catch experienced survivors off guard, but regressing another random generator is always a nice add. Although, how many times are you going to find a generator that's just not being worked on? Monitor and Abuse received a sort of nerf, at least on the killers it would be most effective on, like Wesker. It has decreased to a flat percentage rather than just a flat 8 meters, so it's now 15%. If you're doing the math, that means killers with a 32 meter terror radius will get a decrease of around 4.8 meters, and killers with 40 meter terror radiuses will only get a 6 meter reduction. So it's a flat nerf all around, which is weird. It's not a perk I felt that was particularly strong. It had its uses for sure, and worked really well on some stealth killers and builds dedicated to it, but this nerf was just a bit much in my opinion. It's actually kind of strange. I don't think I've heard any outcry for this perk, and yet it got hit with a nerf anyway. Moving on to the survivor side, again, pause to read all of them because I won't be covering every single one, but there's quite a few buffs here. For one, Plot Twist now recovers 25% faster, which again feels like a weird perk to choose to buff. It could be because this whole update was meant to address slugging and tunneling, and Plot Twist got a buff to reflect that. Either way, it got a buff. Up next is Off the Record. And whew, this one hurts. Off the Record lost endurance. It lost its endurance. But fear not, it gained it back. But this time, instead of 80 seconds, it was 40 seconds. The most recent patch readdressed this. It was so weird. For 2 weeks, it was basically just useless. It was a perk meant to counter tunneling, and it lost the thing that made it anti-tunnel. The only reason I can think that this perk got butchered like this is that the perk was meant to be nerfed alongside the anti-tunnel patch, which directly addressed tunneling. So, I don't know, I guess behavior just didn't revert it and then decided to knee-jerk fix it later. Moving on, Hope got a little bit of a nerf, and honestly, I'm totally okay with this. It only got a nerf from 7% haste to 5% haste, and that's it. Really, it won't make a massive difference at the end of the game, and the perk still feels really strong, so it's fine. It's really not a big deal. Finally, Vigil got a nerf. Praise the sun once more. It no longer stacks with other Vigil uses. That's it. No nerf to how well it still performs by itself. Man, I want to make a whole video on the problem with Vigil, but for now, this'll do to drag it back down from its pedestal of just fucking countering everything in the game. On one last note, there seems to be less bugs this time around. The only one that I was able to see or encountered myself was some weird invisible sky ramps that just lead you to some insane spots. This is only on the Red Forest as far as I can tell, but it was more fun than like game breaking, to be honest with you. There are still a few noticeable ones that have been reported by the community, like the fact that Krasue can't be flashed while picking up if she just looks up before the animation. I think that's been fixed now, I'm not entirely sure, which is just beyond stupid. I couldn't get a clip of this, but apparently hexes can also spawn on certain maps in spots that can't be cleansed or interacted with. It's more than fair to say that bugs are just kind of expected at this point, and the community is just kind of fed up with it. It's not an uncommon sentiment to feel like none of these updates get playtested before being pushed to live. And I harbor similar feelings myself. It does feel like the ball has just been dropped so many times and it's just, it's hard to feel like behavior even gives a shit anymore. I don't know what the PTB is actually for anymore. I feel like it's just an advertisement for the new content. Sinister Grace is a weird chapter. It feels significantly less than what it was supposed to be, and we can probably chop that up to the fact that it was meant to be a significant game changer of an update. It's not the worst that we've ever seen, but it's not exactly calming considering the last update, but it's perfectly fine. Even if some of the choices here are questionable, I don't hate it. I don't love it either, and I'm more or less waiting to see what they do with the proposed changes in Krasue specifically. Even with the patch that came out yesterday, it still feels weird. I don't know if it's a shift in player mentality or if people are just getting fed up with both sides, but it's just miserable to play lately. I feel like the player base is just fed up. I see so many DCs on both sides, Killer and Survivor, tunneling, slugging, and just plain giving up more now than ever before. In the meantime, I'm gonna probably stick to Killer. I enjoy both sides of Dead by Daylight, but unless I'm running with a Swift, I don't think it's a whole lot of fun to be playing Survivor right now. With both Krasue and Kaneki being in almost every other game, and tunneling being more prominent now than ever, it's just not fun. It's not that I blame anyone for doing that, it's a viable strategy at one point or another. The thing is, it just wouldn't be so viable if the game was far more balanced for both sides. I think a revision on those proposed anti-tunnel and anti-slug changes are needed, but they can't punish the killer for tunneling or killing or doing their job. No matter what side you're on right now, or what role you play the most, I think we can both agree that the game is just a little stale right now. There are things heavily affecting both sides, and I can almost guarantee I'm not the only person feeling like this. I love Dead by Daylight, and I want everyone that plays it to love it too, and hopefully in the near future the state of the game improves. But until that happens, I think I'll just be slowly tuning out. Thanks for watching. This is kind of a weird Dead by Daylight video because it is just perfectly fine. Everything is just okay. It also may sound like halfway through this I was sick. It's because my recordings were split up between when I was healthy and I had come down with something and my voice may have changed. I apologize for that. Like I said, the game feels a little stale right now, so I'll probably be tuning out or strictly sticking to one side more than the other. It's not necessarily a bad thing per se, it just is what it is. I think I'll be posting some other content soon. I got some other games that I have in the back burner and also some think pieces that I wanted to do, so I'll get that out as soon as possible. But I appreciate you guys for watching and tuning in. Subscribe if you like this stuff. Leave a comment on what you actually think should change, or if you're having a good time, let me know that as well. Maybe it's just a me thing. Maybe it's just a me issue. But until then, I'll catch you guys in the next one. I love you all. Take care.